The Fourth War has ended, but it will not be long before the cracks in the New Order show. And this isn't speculation. Even now, mere days after the war campaign's conclusion, the seeds of division have taken root. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. Today we have a really exciting one as we delve into the clear problems that exist in the wake of the war campaign's conclusion. Blizzard could not be more clear about what's going to happen. First though, a massive thanks to our patrons. We've now been able to add an extra item to this month's tier, so as well as all the other stuff, you'll get a gorgeous bookmark, which, yeah, it's really nice. So a nice usable thing, and if you'd like us to make any other crafty stuff, let me know down below. Okay, right, here we go. The Azeroth post-Fourth War society is, as with many societies, founded upon a myth, a legend, a myth that is going to be exploited by the most bitter character in Warcraft lore, the one who has become the embodiment of a god's vengeance, one who has not corresponded with her allies in months, one who seemingly has laid low with her new empowered army going unchecked. Now here's the thing, most societies are founded upon a myth, a story, a collective story, whether it be true or false, from where the culture originates. Be it Romulus and Remus for Rome, or maybe the United States founding fathers. It's something that sets a nation's tone. Now foundational myth, that is something that populations rally behind and hold sacred, especially when we're dealing with a fantasy world, where characters may not have our more modern view of things. Now, Blizzard have clearly established the foundational myth of Azeroth's new order. However, it's a myth that in part is built upon a lie that even Saurfang himself is aware of. So, what is a society? Well, it's quite hard to pin down, but at its core, it's pretty much just a shared idea, something that everyone believes in. Sure, institutions will grow up around that, but at its core, it's just an accepted version of reality. The new Horde and Alliance essentially is a new society. Sure, they have lots of history, but they very much have been re-established on friendly terms, with their leadership being allied in their defense of Azeroth. Really, the foundational story of the United Peoples of Azeroth is that we all share the world, and that in a way we are all one, and we have the same goal. But when you delve deeper, you'll see that what this really relies on is the re-establishment of the Horde. And Blizzard have done this with the foundational myth being the honorable sacrifice of Saurfang. That is the story that is supposed to propagate forth and galvanize the entire population, something the whole culture of the Horde can rally behind, basically the cultural rock upon which their future will be built. This is being pushed by all leaders across both factions, and many civilians do buy it, even if it's just because it's what they want to believe, because it makes it possible for them to come to terms with their recent past. This is seen nowhere more clearly than in Saurfang's funeral, where he is held up as the embodiment of the values shared by the idealized version of the Alliance and the Horde. Of course though, as we saw, Saurfang himself would not have necessarily agreed with this, as evidenced by his earlier conversation with Anduin. And this brings us to the lie, the part where Saurfang would have been skeptical of his post-death treatment. So, the success of the Horde's new founding myth is that they are at the core an honorable people, but were just misled by an evil dictator. When you walk the streets of Orgrimmar, you see many characters talk about this, how they trusted Sylvanas but now feel used. You have Night Elves saying that they'll find it hard to fight with the Horde, only to be told by their compatriots that it was really all Sylvanas' fault. Of course, this is 100% the "my boss told me to do it" defense, something which is not regarded as a sound defense here on planet Earth. There are real-world parallels here, of course, with history, even thinking about my own country, Northern Ireland's history and coming to terms with amnesty after a civil war. So, we've all got to ask ourselves, is it a lie? Is the foundational myth a lie? Are the Horde that honorable? Were they just misled? What's going on here? Well, I think that one's actions are their own. Regarding Teldrassil, the blood is on everyone's hands, even including Saurfang, who himself had fallen into a deep depression as he came to terms with his part in Teldrassil. Indeed, Saurfang offers up the strongest criticism of his own people just before the battle when he talks to Anduin. For his whole life, he's been held up as this example of honor, yet he does not agree with that assessment, an assessment of his character that is now being used to establish the new Horde. Horde. Now, regardless of one's own take on the Horde and of culpability, it is clear that many characters in the world are not buying what the faction leadership are selling them. Worse still, we are seeing the atrocities of Sylvanas' version of the Horde being brushed under the rug. Blizzard are not doing this blindly though, they know what's going on here, and they've even began to tease and even show the repercussions of the Fourth War's end. Not everyone is buying it. Across Orgrimmar, we see those who remained loyal to Sylvanas be berated, taunted, and denied service at shops. Now yes, Bane, Gazlowe and co, they're doing what they can to defuse these situations, saying that the Banshee Queen deceived all of them. But this is clearly not what everyone believes when you walk around the game world after all the cinematics happen. We have Night Elves being told that the people who slaughtered them were just duped by Sylvanas, that she's to blame, not the people who actually swung the axe, the people who fired the catapults. Many clearly do not buy this new founding myth across both sides. Many of Saurfang's rebels don't trust the loyalists. Some loyalists still remain loyal, others feel betrayed, and much of the Alliance does not truly trust them, as is evident in Stormwind and Borealis. When you're in Stormwind, you see a group of Night Elf refugees, with their leader saying not to worry, that the Night Warrior has not forgotten vengeance. Going around Borealis, you see even more Night Elf Sentinels who do not feel like they have reached a conclusion, who are not satisfied with the new status quo. Clearly, not all people are on board, something that makes sense, as the citizens of Orgrimmar, they were about to fight the rebels and the Alliance. Had the Makarad not happened, they would have ended up killing each other. That kind of still is the case. Now, clearly, the leadership's attempt to brush it all under the rug, that's just doomed to fail, especially as the simplistic take on honor used to describe Saurfang is one that he himself actually came out against hours before his own funeral. So, the new peace is built on shaky foundations. That much we've established here. Those who have borne the brunt of it, of course, are the Night Elves who, in terms of body count, lost more than just about any other group. And as I mentioned earlier, Tyrande stopped responding to Anduin's missives. We are told that just before the main cinematic. Now, a missive is different to a personal letter. A missive is formal. It's an official letter from a king in this case. The sort of thing that you should reply to, especially when it's during a war and you're commanding a force. Her not responding, you could take it to be literally treasonous to the Alliance, as she denied the Alliance war effort vital manpower in the form of the Army of the Black Moon. Remember, Anduin was fretting about not having enough soldiers just before the Second Siege of Orgrimmar happened, so he absolutely could have used Tyrande's help. What can we infer from this? Well, it's quite simple. Tyrande wants vengeance on the Horde to the point where she refused to attack Orgrimmar. Why? Well, because she does not make the distinction between the Sylvanas loyalists and the Saurfang rebels. As far as she's concerned, they all partook in Teldrassil and Lordaeron. It seems like she is turning away from the lessons that Varian taught her during Pandaria. So, is Tyrande right? Well, I'd say she's probably right in not buying the lie behind the new foundational myth of the Horde. She almost certainly, though, will be wrong in how she responds to it, and it will almost certainly be, well, more violence, something that the Alliance and the Horde leaders, who are now far more concerned with N'Zoth, do not want at all. So who could actually join her? Well, of all the Alliance leaders, Genn owes her people a lot and is the least on board with the Horde. After all, we did see him question Anduin's decision to allow himself to be surrounded by Horde leaders just before the cinematic played. And then even if Genn wouldn't go to war, well, when you walk around Stormwind, you see like Gilnean citizens hungry for war, so maybe his daughter would actually lead that charge. Now, to be clear here, I'm not advocating for this plotline, I'm merely just presenting what Blizzard have teased in as cohesive a manner as I can. Indeed, many people have wished for the Night Elves to be their savage selves again, as we saw in Warcraft 3. But there's a big difference here though. It's empowered by Elune, it's empowered by the Night Warrior, and that is our next topic. Tyrande underwent the ritual of the Night Warrior during patch 8.1. Now, the Night Warrior is an aspect of Elune, who seems to, basically, Elune seems to be like one character of many persons, something that we do see with many religious systems. Now, Tyrande is currently an avatar of Elune's wrath. That is a wrath that I imagine is at least as strong as her capacity for light, meaning it's pretty darn strong. Now, according to the lore, even seeing the Night Warrior ritual is dangerous, and indeed, many people did see it, and many others, of course, combined with them, were later empowered by Tyrande, forming the Army of the Black Moon. Now, according to Chandris, the ritual is so dangerous that nobody has survived it since the earliest days of the Night Elves, and that's something that that just, like, shows you the immense power that Tyrande now wields. I mean, choice lines from her in patch 8.1 include, "We will kill them all, the time for mercy is over, I failed to protect my people, but I will avenge them," amongst others. With her not replying to the rest of the Alliance, with her actually staying out and withholding her army, I mean, I think it's pretty darn clear what's going on. Tyrande does not feel like she has avenged her people. She absolutely still wants to. We even have Night Elves talking about her not forgetting vengeance. Now, what's funny here is that this, in fact, plays right into a particular Undead Elves plan. While Sylvanas may have considered Saurfang's rebellion to have ended a bit early, and she's sad about the deaths that haven't happened, there's nothing Sylvanas would want more than for Tyrande to follow in her footsteps and strike out of the forest against Orgrimmar and just wipe everyone out. This, if it happened, would crumble the foundational myth, and it would, well, I suppose it would even the moral chasm between the Alliance and the Horde that Saurfang referenced. So what if Gan sided with her? What if just Gilneans did? Remember, in 8.1, Tyrande did go against her king's wishes to Darkshore, and Gan followed her. Gan didn't ask for permission. Anduin really allowed himself to be a doormat king, and I think this will come back to haunt him as he deals with the fallout of his faction at no longer being clean whenever Tyrande, like, makes her move. Then additionally, Night Warrior Tyrande would also allow Blizzard to further explore Elune. Now, this means they could mine a lot more lore out of that, and as I've covered in previous videos, they certainly have been teasing Elune a lot. Now, look, you, like me, you're probably a bit skeptical of yet another Blizzard character going in this direction. And yeah, it mightn't be ideal, but I think the big change would be how it would play out. I think that the middle and the end of this plotline would be very different to, say, the current Sylvanas story. And then I suppose, speaking of Sylvanas, well, as I said, there's nothing that she would like more than to have a vengeance-filled avatar of a god cause yet more death. Because after all, Sylvanas is all about feeding that hungering darkness, whatever it may be. Maybe she will tunnel vision, and maybe just as N'Zoth would want, right when we're trying to fight N'Zoth, she will do something rather ill-advised. And, of course, just like Sylvanas would want, it will just lead to more death and destruction for the Alliance and Horde, which all feeds death, spelt with a capital D, whoever he or she may be. So there you go, that's my deep dive into, I mean, what I think is actually a really fun topic, because it is talking about the re-establishment of a society. And whenever I say foundational myth, I'm not saying myth as in it's not true, I'm saying myth as in, like, kind of what that is in a cultural context. Like, the foundational myth of, like, say, Rome was, like, you know, Romulus and Remus, but of course they mostly believed that that stuff was pretty true back in the day, so that's kind of what I mean there. So, like, the sort of crumbling of a civilization and, like, the social order and all of that, I think those are super interesting topics, and, you know, I think regardless of, you know, opinions in 8.2.5, I think that could allow Blizzard to explore interesting narrative territory between the Alliance and the Horde. We'll just have to see how Tyrande is actually dealt with. But anyway, there you go. That is it for today's video. Of course, if you're interested in the Patreon stuff, we now have a 4th item in there. You'll get the really cool bookmarks, so you can check that out. It's the best way to support our team and what we're doing. But yes, thank you very much. There'll be more lore to follow, and I will see you next time.